Good evening and happy Monday. The next big test for Starship could be as early as Sunday. A radical update to federal acquisition regulations, the FAR, promises a new era for commercial buying. We'll see how that affects our community. Orbiting weapons and hijacked satellites. Is space the new battlefield in the 21st century? Rocket Lab finalizes its acquisition of Geost. Meantime, across the pond, EdgeX raises 2.3 million euros in seed finance for AI computing in space. Old space versus new space, 10 years on. We're going to take a look at that from a guy who was there. Spaceport America continues to add value despite losing an anchor tenant. NASA is seeking industry feedback on lunar fission. And we, the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, just helped launch a new microgrant competition in Sydney, Australia, coming the end of September. We'll talk about that. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. Folks, as you know, this podcast is brought to you by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. What do? We champion and strengthen emerging space startups, space scalable businesses, and space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory access and advocacy across the funding spectrum. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at varying levels of development. A lot of our work, especially this podcast, is supported by our listeners and fans like you. So if you go to cscf.space/support and click that plain as day donate button, we'll get a little in the tip jar, and a little of that each month makes a big difference to our fans. Now, welcome my longest space friend and maybe the space community's answer to Elron, Michael Lane.
Hey, how are you?
Hey.
Elron.
I love the cult references. I just love them. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
hadn't heard that one before, but yeah,
okay.
The cult of the space elevator. It's a thing. He does.
It is a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but I'm just reading Stranger in the Strange Land again by Heinlein. And there's pop culture references to a bet between Heinlein and Hubbard about who could create a religion. And because Stranger in a Strange Land has a very strong religious element to it, I've often wondered if that was a true story. I don't know if anybody could possibly know if it was a true story or not, but yeah, I've actually read a couple things from Hubbard that are pretty entertaining. Mm-hmm. It's got one of the longest decologies, 10 gigantic books. It takes up about that much of my bookshelf. Right. Yeah, it's kind of wild. And yeah, I really liked Battlefield Earth. No joke. I actually liked it. It's a terrible movie and a super fun book. Yes, exactly. The book, not the movie.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's kind of like Starship Troopers. It's like, yeah. Great book. The movie really sucked.
Right. Yeah.
And they made like 3 more of them later that went straight to video. And they were even worse.
Yeah.
But
well, how's things? What's going on?
Well, God, what is going on? Well, we've got something we're going to talk about a little later.
We got some good news.
News section. We got some big news. We launched the big competition in Sydney for the Space Generation Congress. We'll be talking about that in just a minute. But it looks like after repeated explosions and various failures, Elon's Starship is ready for another go, possibly as early as this Sunday.
Monday, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
I would like to see a better outcome than we have seen. That was I hate losing momentum on stuff like this. We all are rooting for him. It's frustrating to see these things go and then not go. So I like to see one go. I just perform flawlessly and get it done, because I still remember that first the successful Falcon launch. That was in 2008, and it was during IAC in Glasgow. And it's actually sponsored a party, and we all went down with an open bar. We all celebrated. Yeah,
nice.
That was a lot of fun.
That's a great party.
I was going to say, hey, Morty's here. Hi, Morty. Joe Pastrito is here. I had a funny feeling Joe would be here given our guest, and so I thought sure he'd be here. And so, welcome, Joe. We look forward to your commentary. Right.
I want to just add one piece to Musk, the SpaceX story, because just a couple hours ago, Eric Berger at Ars Technica just wrote an interesting article that I just sent to you, Tom, but it wasn't fast enough to make the news today. Okay. But he just interviewed a reporter, an expert watching China, space China person, Dean Cheng. I don't know anything about him, but I like Eric Berger, so I trust the source.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, we're not going to beat the Chinese back to the moon, and that is going to have gigantic ripple effects. So, and one of the complaints is, concerns is because everything is dependent on Starship, and the setbacks make this really hard to hit that deadline that we have. So I'm really watching. I'm going to be rooting for him on Sunday. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Yep. Get back on track,
Yeah.
Because they did restore some funding to SLS.
Right.
And so it's like, well, okay, so we're committed to at least 3 of these things. And because China isn't, their goal is 2030 to get on the moon. Our goal is, I don't know,
before 2030.
Before 2030.
Right. That's what they keep saying.
Maybe 2027, because the orbital, we don't even get the orbital flight with people until like next spring.
Yeah.
Late next spring sometime. So it's going to be at least another year. And that's if they hurry.
Yep.
But it's funny because in the original Apollo, not the Apollo on Viagra, but the original, when they had a full load of testosterone, those guys were launching missions, Apollo missions, like every 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
They were launching stuff. And so what is going on?
Well, both Joe and Morty are like, they're doing all the prereqs. And that's Joe. And then Morty's like, well, we got it. Might be hard to admit, but we have to accept reality. I'm not quite ready to admit defeat just yet, but it is hard to watch this.
Although it may be a case of life imitating art, because we're going to get the 4th season of For All Mankind real soon.
Right. Yep.
And we just trade the Russians for the Chinese, and we could be replaying that scenario in real life right now.
The rest of the storyline.
So there you go. Okay. Yeah. Next up, I didn't read this too much. Maybe you did, but I just thought, because I think you sent this to me. It's apparently the Office of Federal Government Policy. They updated the FAR, and it's supposed to make it far more easy to do commercial buying or something. They haven't done an overhaul of the procedures in like 4 decades. So, maybe it's time for a little change. I don't know.
It's true. I know that this policy piece is just dull as dirt.
Yeah.
I would rather watch paint dry, but this is the stuff that makes all the other stuff possible, right? These are the rules that allow for, these are the rules that allow for Artemis to happen.
Yep.
So, and there's a argument that can be made that these rules are so far out of date.
Interestingly, though, the kind of the whole goal of this is just a few paragraphs back, the one that was all highlighted in bold.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Old rules built for paperwork, new rules are built for performance. It's like, I think right behind me, I need to put that old poster that Fox Mulder had with the
I
flying
want to believe.
saucer that says, I want to
I want to
believe,
believe. Yeah.
because that's how I'm feeling right now. You know, uh,
Yeah, I do. I want to believe this. I hope it's true. Because everything depends on it. I
yeah,
mean, this policy stuff is deadly dull, but our hopes and dreams only come to fruition with this federal acquisitions requirement process, and it's not pretty. Uh, I, I was at a meeting probably about a year and a half ago, and they were talking about how to make this stuff better. And I'm like, can you just use modern web tools? I mean, I can't tell you how many forms I've gone to that say it's a 300 character limit, it's a 200 character limit, it's a 1,000 character
right.
limit. That's the answer that the people reviewing it want to see for that problem. Just make modern tools available in this system, and that's true for Inspires, for NASA. It's true for uh, um, Space Force and Air Force's SBIR
Yeah.
programs. It's true for National Science Foundation.
It's true for everything.
Those are all systems that I have personal experience with, and they're all awful.
Yep,
They're
they
awful.
are. I've had some experience myself back in
Yeah,
the glory
right.
days of the AIM
You
program.
just did.
It was
Yeah,
insane. It was
yeah,
insane.
yeah.
And the other thing is too, I mean, it ties in with that. They're not talking about this here, but I think just we need to take another good look at our regulatory structure in particular, because it's just too much. I remember, whatever you think of Trump, in his first administration, he really committed to reducing a lot of, deregulating a lot of things. And during his time in office back then, for every new regulation was put in place, 22 of them were removed.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
we need to keep doing that. That's how you open up the floodgates of free minds and free markets, is to
I
not
hope so.
regulate and tax and, pay for it to death.
I
And
hope
so
so.
we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
Now,
this line about old rules for paperwork, new rules for performance. I want to believe that so
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see. Well,
We'll know
I
in a
mean,
year
I'm
or
curious.
two.
Of course, when they issue this, they issue 3 new documents: the FAR companion guide, the practitioner's album, and the category guide. Like, well, we're going to throw out all this other stuff, but now we have to teach you how to do the new thing. So,
Yeah, and and for that we introduced our new cartoon character, Dr. Farr, and you can click it. It's an animated AI that can help you through the whole process.
right.
You know,
So, I'm just curious to see how they pull this off. Right, it's going to take a while for it to
yeah,
ripple down to our
yeah,
level, but changes are coming. I hope it's true.
okay. Meantime, we got space weapons. We've got hijacked satellites. I think we have a guest coming up later. Is it later this week? I don't know who wants to talk about even space debris being weaponized. And so, but right now, people are saying that's the new battlefield now, because I guess Russia actually hacked a Ukrainian satellite. Let's just bringing this up during a key engagement, and it just kind of messed it up for everybody.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that, what's going on over there here. That's politics. That's not our purview here. Unless it's space, then space politics. Oh yes, we will yammer on that all day long. So,
all day long.
Yeah.
No, it's spooky. You've got an IT background. I've only barely considered what it takes to secure 12,000.
Well, they're learning the hard way now, because see, traditionally, we were one happy fleet, as Khan would say. We were all out there putting our stuff out there, and we're all helping each other out. And they didn't put a lot of protections in these things, as they might normally do in a corporate IT environment, where you're trying to protect your IP and protect your, especially the larger the business, the bigger the vulnerability you have. And so a lot of vulnerabilities, extreme vulnerabilities, were put up on these early devices on the various communication satellites, because back then there just wasn't enough room on the chip to put a bunch of heavy-handed stuff on there to try to protect you from hacking. Who's going to hack our geosat? Please, come on, guys. And and back in the days when a megabyte of RAM cost $500,000, you just didn't do it.
Right.
And so, but now all of a sudden things have gotten more sophisticated, and the stuff we're sending up is getting more sophisticated. And I've got a computer with 128 gigabyte of RAM on it.
Right.
And it costs me a couple $100 to do it. And so it's a completely different universe. And you're absolutely right. Wearing my old IT hat, they're in trouble.
I will really wonder about this. I know that Embry-Riddle had a course on space and security from the IT perspective, because once that satellite is launched, it's out of your hands, right? Now it's what can you do with it afterwards? I think it's an interesting field. I think that there's probably a lot of money that's going to flow into that. Especially, I bet you, I'm going to pull out my crystal ball here and say, I bet you that the Golden Dome money has a lot of cybersecurity elements to it.
Oh yeah, probably a lot of it, I would imagine.
Right, because it's going to be so important that stuff not get spoofed. Right, you can already spoof GPS data. I think there's a lot there.
Well, that's the thing. Because the Iron Dome hasn't proven to be all that iron lately, and so I don't know if the Golden Dome is going to be any better. Are they just taking the Iron Dome and putting a false coat of paint on it? Or is it really an allusion to the gold coming from all the contractors getting all that money?
There's going to be a lot of that. Sean, our producer, is trying to get our attention regarding the weaponization of maybe putting a space-based weapon into orbit. That idea, I mean, we were talking about science fiction earlier. Hubbard and Heinlein and Clark and Bradbury and Asimov, everybody has been talking about that for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. But what kind of crazy damage would that be? And our resident space lawyer, Wes, is like, well, that would be an egregious violation of the Outer Space Treaty, but I don't know that Russia cares about that.
Well, you know what? There's the tinfoil hat crowd say they're out there already.
Yep.
Yeah, there are beams that are going out that can set fires and do other stuff. It's already out there.
Sure.
You tend not to believe these things until you're in the path of one, and then it's too late.
I had a one-on-one conversation with the chief scientist of U.S. Space Force about just how bad things could be. This is not classified, but if you can imagine a bag of sand just shoved out the airlock at the ISS would cause a really bad day. Never mind an an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse.
Yep, EMP.
Shocking.
And we rods
the world
from
would
God, we won't go there. Yeah.
Right. But let me just point out to Wes for a second. So we have this kind of global pact about not doing any more anti-satellite tests. And that's been in place only for about 5 years, maybe 4 years, something like that. We did it, Russia did it, China did it, India did, and that was a surprise to everybody. But then Russia went and did it a second time. Mm-hmm. And for them, the first time you do it, you prove that you can, but then you stop. And then the second time you did it with Russia, it doesn't prove capability, it proves willingness. And that's a different problem. So, Wes, I don't know that I think that Russia is very concerned about violating the our space treaty. I just not sure that they care that much. So far, there hasn't been a lot of proof of that.
Yep. Well, we have more news items and time is shortening. So there's a couple of things because I really want to get to our application thing, but we have, but let's just very quickly just pop it up there. Rocket Labs finally completed their Geost acquisition, and I guess that extend their capabilities. And so they now have a national security portfolio that they want to sell to everybody. And and that's it. That was like $175 million deal, I guess, to acquire those guys. And so I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. We don't have to go into it in any big detail, but also because we always talk about money. Everybody, is getting money. A company called, I guess they're called EdgeX or EDGX. They also got a 2.3 million euro seed round that would they want to do satellite AI computing. I don't know how you do that, but they got 2.3 million euros to give it a shot.
Yeah, that doesn't. I know there's our friends at Lone Star and Star Cloud and a couple others. There's a recent rumor that says Sam Altman from OpenAI is thinking about doing on orbit data centers, and there's rumor that who's the guy? The guy Schmidt, the guy who used to run Google, Eric Schmidt. Yeah, that he's really interested in orbital data centers.
Well, they won't be 10 gigawatts,
right?
So
I don't really get this. It's not an area I know much about, so I'm not going to throw rocks at something that I don't know that much about. But it is really confusing to me. But there's definitely a lot of money flow in that direction. So.
Yeah, I'm digging into it a little bit. I'm not getting it either, but especially because the raw computing power that you need to do AI and do it well sucks up a lot of electricity.
Yep.
And that's just the way it is. I know an outfit in India who's trying to change that. I tried to get them to come to our thing in June, and they wouldn't do it. So I'm going to have to talk them into it again because I think they have an answer for that. And they're just kind of sitting on it. We'll see. I'll circle back to those guys in the fall, probably after IAC, because I want them involved. I'm going to skip a couple. Well, let's see. Okay. You at least leave this as a link for folks to look at on their own. Because this guy wrote a great article about New Space, who was just really starting about 10 years ago, and now he's revisited his own work and shows what a difference a decade makes. Because it was really the industry didn't amount to much at the time he was writing the article, but he was a booster, and he had a company himself, and he thinks we're gonna make a splash someday. And here we are 10 years later, and we have $625 billion industry, and money's pouring in all the time, and startup after startup after startup is getting funded, even if we think some of them shouldn't be. But they're doing a good job, and that's a good thing to read if you have time to read it.
I looked the guy up, Jim Cantrell.
Yeah,
I know his name, but I've never met him. But I actually looked him up. I'm going to post his LinkedIn profile because it's pretty fascinating. He did a whole bunch of years at ICI, which is one of the earliest, very successful commercial space satellite companies in the Earth observation, with a lot of military contracts. He was at York Space Systems. He was at StratSpace. He was at SpaceX. He was chief technical officer of Moon Express. A lot of things I did not know about him. Yeah. Paragon. He's on the board of directors at Paragon. Yeah. Board of advisors of the Planetary Society, and the vice president at SpaceX back all the way at 2001 and 2002.
Right.
So yeah, it's a really interesting read. You guys post the article and I'll post the link to it.
Okay, I'm going to skip the next few things. We have to get to our guest, but I just want to say one thing. There's something that the center launched today. I want to talk about just for 1 minute. We've been working on a deal with the Space Generation Advisory Council for their Space Generation Congress in Sydney this coming September 25th. We are sponsoring a elevator pitch competition during the Space Generation Congress, and we're working with those guys, and they've been a great crew to work with. And we just announced this, and there is our application form is right there for anyone who wants to get involved. You have to be an Australian person. So if you're already attending the Space Generation Congress, you can and you want to start up, have a startup you want to pitch, you can sign up for this thing right here on this form. Also, there'll be people if you're going to go to Sydney, see the IAC, or you're already there in the area, and you want to take part in this, you can. You don't have to be a delegate to the SGC in order to participate in this thing. If you're already there, you're planning on attending at least one of those events, you can apply for this, and your application will be considered. You get like a day pass, to go in there and participate, and you'll meet some very interesting people and have all the coffee you could drink. I guess they're going to be, and they're going to stream it. It's going to be streamcast as well, so that's a great thing. So more on that as events, move on, and now on that.
We have to thank our sponsor, the Werb and Barth Family Office, because this stuff doesn't happen without that financial support. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Lori. That was great. Okay. Our guest tonight, at long last, Guillermo Söhnlein. He was the original founder of the International Association of Space Entrepreneurs, the Space Angels Network, that we all know about and love, and we'll talk about that. The Humans to Venus Foundation, and of course, Ocean Gate, which he's written a book about that we're going to talk about a little bit. He's committed not only to lots of humans exploring space, but the deep oceans as well. He's just an amazing guy. Please welcome Guillermo Söhnlein.
Hey guys, great to see you.
Great to be seen and great to see you, man. It's been a long time.
I know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I owe you a bit of thanks, because it was Space Angels Network inadvertently gave me a big opportunity back in 2011 when we got the first of the Ames grants. So we're going to do the business plan competition at the Space Frontier Conference. And Space Angels was going to help produce it. And in the last minute, they decided they couldn't do it. And so I am at ISDC in Huntsville, and I get a call from Will Watson. We need to run this thing. Tom, can you do it? It's like, okay, it's 8 weeks away. Okay. I'll give it a shot. And the rest is history, because we've run a whole lot of BPC since then. That led to the founding of the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, and it led to this very podcast. So thank you for that.
Well, glad we could be of assistance. Yeah.
Okay, we usually start out by just have you come in and give us a little background. How did you become Guillermo Söhnlein? What's your backstory?
Oh, geez. Well, so like a lot of you guys, I've been interested in space since I was a kid, right? I just have distinct memories of a recurring dream I had when I was 11 years old, where I was going to be the first commander of the human colony on Mars. And so I've really kind of spent my entire life looking at that. I was a frustrated astronaut, couldn't become a NASA astronaut because my eyesight went bad. So instead I went into law school, then the Marine Corps, and then did a tech startup in Silicon Valley, and that just kind of led me down this path of 25 years of doing over a dozen for-profit and nonprofit startups. A lot of them in the space world, most of them at the intersection, kind of like you guys, at the intersection of startups and investors. Kind of like you mentioned, Space Angels Network, right? Kind of connecting the investor world with the entrepreneur world and vice versa.
Okay, great. So how did that get going? You started the International Association of Space Entrepreneurs when back in what,
Yeah.
2003? It was before anybody knew a space entrepreneur exists.
Yeah.
What
Yeah. Well,
inspired you to do that?
well, I mean, if it was like a lot of startups, it was self-serving, right?
Yeah.
I think we sold our internet company in 2001. So in 2002, I decided, okay, I'm going to go do space stuff now, right? And my thought was that I would do a space startup. I would do
That's
another
what
startup. This one, a space startup. But the problem is, I didn't know anything about space. I didn't know anyone in space, and I didn't have any technical background. So just a couple of problems.
Just a
So
little.
I decided, I need to find a space co-founder to help me out. So I started going to space conferences. And what I found was that there were a lot of, let's call them space enthusiasts back then, but not a lot of entrepreneurs who really knew how to build businesses, and certainly no investors. So I started trying to create an event series that would cater to entrepreneurs from outside the space industry and bring them into the space industry. So I talked to all the major organizations, the Space Foundation, Space Frontier Foundation, National Space Society, like everybody, about creating an event series that would draw in those entrepreneurs. And wasn't getting any bites because everyone was already underfunded and stressed, doing their regular programming. So finally someone said, you're just going to have to go create it on your own. It's the last thing I wanted to do was to start a nonprofit, right? So we started IAC essentially as a way of trying to find, the next Elon Musk, right? And not just the next Elon Musk, but a lot of Elon Musks, and bring them from outside the space industry into the space industry. Flash forward, that ended up becoming this, predated Facebook and all that, right? It became an online community of about 2,500 people around the world. And then we ended up, as you remember, we ended up transferring that to the Space Frontier Foundation, since that was really in Space Frontier Foundation's wheelhouse. And then Will Watson and others tried running that, I think, for about 4 years before they sunsetted the program because they didn't need it anymore. By then, there were a lot of entrepreneurs coming in from outside the space industry. Mm-hmm. So it was a little bit self-serving. I kind of did it so that I could find my technical co-founder for my space startup, which ended up not happening until years later. But yeah,
years later.
Well, that list ended up in the hands of the Space Frontier Foundation, did it not?
Yeah.
Eventually, ultimately, yeah.
And it was one of these things where, again, self-serving, it ended up leading to the start of Space Angels Network, because
that was my next question.
That online community started trying to identify what kind of issues new space ventures or new space entrepreneurs would face. And the first one was funding, right? Where we're going to get funding. So a group of us was going to start a space venture fund in 2005, 2006. Now, if you think about that, that would have been way too early.
Too early.
So what we decided back then was we had a solid enough team. We thought we could raise a $100 million fund, but as you know, those venture funds are 10-year closed funds, and we just didn't see enough deal flow out there in 2005, to justify a venture fund. So we decided instead, we naively thought, well, let's do the easier thing. Let's start an angel investor network focused on space.
So much better.
Holy cow, that was much harder than doing a venture fund.
Right.
So that ended up launching in 2006. And again, I was still looking for my technical co-founder and an idea for my space startup. So again, kind of self-serving. I figured even if I started one, I'd need seed funding anyway, so may as well start the angel investor group. And then just flash forward that one, since everyone has heard of Space Angels today. I turned that over to Joe Landon in 2010. He ran it, I think, until 2015. At that point, Chad Anderson took it over, relaunched it, rebranded. He's the one that over the last 10 years has really turned Space Angels and Space Capital into what it is today. So
it didn't hurt that there were more opportunities.
Yeah.
Right. Again, it's a timing question.
It didn't hurt.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, and I say this all the time. I mean, credit to Chad for all the hard work and the insight and his experience and knowledge, but he also timed it really well.
Yeah.
I don't think he intentionally timed it. He just recognized it was the right time.
Well, but Chad had been
he did it.
Chad had been in the community for years prior
Yeah.
to that. Wasn't he mentored by Diamandis, right? Like he'd been around for years prior to taking on that role. So he knew the ecosystem, he knew the people, he knew the players, he knew the technology.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to be a catalyst. I don't think I've ever even shook his hand. So I don't know.
Oh
him.
yeah, no. I mean, he's a bright guy. He was at Oxford, then he was working at Satellite Catapult in the UK. And even if, and again, to your point, even if he wanted to relaunch it and needed to go out and get the right investors and get that going, he, not just anybody could have done that, right?
No,
so he had the right connections, he had the credibility, he had the track record, and since then it's just been a rocket ride for him.
Joe was out here. Joe Landon and his team were out here for Seattle out here, out in Seattle area for many years. So I kind of watched them. So I've kind of seen each iteration, and each one of them got better. Each one of them, took the foundation that was set before them and just piled on. It's been really remarkable to see what all of y'all have done as this whole ecosystem has grown, evolved, and your stamp on it as it evolves is kind of a big deal.
Well, I was talking about this the other day with Rick Tomlinson, that one of the things that I retroactively am proud of is how many people today are in like leadership positions in the space world, who at one time or another went through Space Angels Network, right? They had some interaction with Space Angels Network. Even the three of us on this call right now, right? In some way, shape, or form, we had an interaction with Space Angels Network. So I'm pretty proud of that. But I guess continuing the story, again, being very self-serving, I was looking for a space co-founder and an idea. Through Space Angels Network, I actually did find my technical co-founder, and I did come up with an idea, but it wasn't about space. So in 2009, I moved to your neck of the woods in Seattle, and co-founded OceanGate. Again, with a frustrated astronaut who also, eyesight went bad, and we realized that going underwater here on Earth is as close to going into space as we were going to get in our lifetimes, at least we thought. And I met Stockton, my co-founder, through Space Angel, well, indirectly through Space Angels Network. In 2008, we were doing an aerospace venture forum. We had a guy named Graham Hawks come pitching for money from Space Angels Network. He was an aerospace engineer who had applied aerodynamic principles to submersibles. He basically had winged submersibles that would dive underwater, fly underwater. So Joe Landon and I and the rest of the team brought him in, got to meet him. That's how I got into submersibles. He introduced me to Stockton, and that led to OceanGate.
Wow.
So that's the story of how I got into subs and ocean exploration, and how we started OceanGate.
Before we leave the topic of Space Angels Network, I mean, I want to go on to what you're talking about. I want to go into OceanGate and beyond. My question is, over all this time that SCN's been running, roughly, I'm not going to ask for like numbers of dollars that you put in, but I'm just curious the numbers of companies that you've helped out and funded and introduced to the world.
Yeah, I don't know, because if you think, I kind of break it down into phases. I ran it from 2006 to 2010, Joe Landon from 2010 to 2015, and then Chad for the last 10 plus years. Chad would know the numbers from those years. Joe would know his numbers. But what I do know is when I was running it, things were so early, because you guys remember, that time. It wasn't even so much about getting funding to those companies. Sometimes it was just about connecting them with the right people, and helping them hone their business models and helping them figure out how to pitch to investors. And on the investor side, it was about starting to educate mainstream angel investor groups and venture capital firms. Right, because back then, because I think you mentioned it earlier during the news part. I think you did. Anyway, the first successful Falcon 1 launch was in 2008. right? So, that's really kind of started triggering some of the venture capital looking at space. 2014, when Google acquired Skybox Imaging, that's what really opened the floodgates for venture capital. But back in 2006, 2007, nobody was looking at it. So a lot of what we were doing was kind of priming the pump and educating the market on both sides, right? Educating the entrepreneur side and educating the investor side. So I remember just a lot of meetings and calls and conference calls and events with mainstream angel investor groups like Boston Harbor Angels and Pasadena Angels and Sand Hill Angels, and talking with just mainstream venture capital firms, whether it's the folks at Sequoia or Bessemer or any of those places, just very early on. So it's one of these things where, as a let's say an impact entrepreneur, I can't measure success on the dollars or on the jobs created or anything like that. It's more on just the almost, I don't know, I don't want to call it historical impact, but that's kind of what it was. It was just kind of laying the groundwork for stuff that would come later.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me because because we who lived it, understand more than a lot of the young kids coming up, is that this seems what's going on now seems like just a natural progression, and they can look forward to this. And there are people who can put money in, and they have places to go, and they have the whole future universe in front of them. We were walking a tightrope back then. We had no idea where a slight breeze could come and push us off the tightrope any second. We were just barely hanging on by our fingernails most days.
Yeah. Well, you guys can probably appreciate this, and you probably experienced this yourself. So 2 years ago, I moved to Barcelona. So now I'm living in Europe. And because of that, I've been going to a lot of space events throughout Europe. And I was last year, I was getting a little bit frustrated with some of these space events, because to me, they just seemed like, oh my God, they're just talking about the same topics we were talking about like 10, 15 years ago. Like, why are we still having these panel discussions about this, and this, when we've been talking about that for 10 or 15 years? And at one of the events, one of my friends saw that I was frustrated and asked me why I was frustrated. And I explained this to her. And she said, yeah, but this is a conference in Switzerland.
Right.
And then, or in Portugal, or in Spain, or in Luxembourg.
They don't have that deep bench that we do.
Right. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a sec, that's right. Those of us that were doing this, 20 plus years ago, we were doing it in the US, and we were just hoping that someday this would globalize, right? And other people would jump into it. And now they are. It's all over the world. Every country's got space ventures emerging and space investments. I've got to go back and find the numbers. A couple of years ago, I looked, and it was something like, since the year 2000, there's been something like 53 new civil space agencies created around the world.
Yeah,
whatever the number is, maybe it's 40. I don't remember.
No,
it's crazy.
In 25 years, there's more than 50 new space agencies. The big ones that you would know, Israel, Italy, but small nations are developing it. I don't think of Australia as being a small nation, but as a small economy. Right. Korea just launched a space agency just last 2 years ago. Right. Mexico is only 8 years old. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Hey, sorry, I just saw a comment of who's it, Joe? Castrito.
Yeah.
He invested in XCore in 1999. Yeah, that was one of my first experiences with Space Angels Network, was through Robert Jacobson and Rich Purnell and Jeff Grayson and everyone else at XCore. That was a great company, at least
good people
until it wasn't. But I love that company. That's one of the reasons actually, sorry, just a quick anecdote, because going back to how much money got put in, I said it's more about connecting people. I was at one point, I was trying to recruit a new angel investor member into Space Angels Network, and he asked me, "Can you introduce me to XCore, because I want to invest in XCore?" And I just looked at him and I go, "Wait, I've got." And he had just cashed out of a tech company, and this was going to be his first investment in space. And I said, "Wait, I'll do you one better." We were organizing a panel at a conference about investing in space, and we had Esther Dyson on there. I think that was also Lon Levin was on that, and we had Andrew Nelson from XCore were on the panel, and I needed a new angel investor to put on the panel. And I said, wait, how about if you come down where in Florida and sit on this panel? He said, well, I haven't made any investments. I don't know anybody, but that's the perspective we needed.
Right. Yeah.
So I brought him down. He served on the panel. He got to sit next to Andrew Nelson. They talked. He ended up investing in XCore. So it wasn't a big check, I don't think. So financially, it wasn't a big impact, but it was just about creating that network effect, right? And just kind of having everyone participate.
Right, which leads kind of there was because the guy up there, Jason, you see him. He has a question. I think it's interesting from a historical perspective. Yes, that one right there. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, how important were existing relationships with? You mean my personal existing relationships, or it's just the network?
Or in general, in your experience,
in general.
What you see,
yeah. I think even today, it's all about existing relationships. I think.
I've been talking to my intern Christina, and I say it's a handshakes industry.
Yeah.
It's you have to go to the conferences, you have to go to the meetings. Okay, right. It's you gotta go, and you gotta talk to people, because this network is small. The three of us have been at this. We have a combined 80 years worth of time on this thing in this sector. Most people don't have that, right? So
most pretty good. So,
most companies that exist, if you put everybody in the company, they don't have 80 years of combined experience in this sector. But there is a lot to be said about handshakes and relationships. And so Jason, those relationships were key. This industry that we all have kind of fallen in love with would not exist without that kind of handshakes relationship level way back when. And we just saw Voyager go public. That was a handshakes relationship going back 20 years before they did what they did a month ago. So I can't stress relationships enough.
Yeah, so the founder and CEO of Voyager is Dylan Taylor, who before that was president or CEO, COO of Colliers. And I remember meeting Dylan back then, because he was trying to come in through Space Angels Network. To the way he wanted to kind of get into the space world was by writing some angel investor checks into. And so that was 20 plus years ago. So it's all relationships.
Okay.
Well, we only have about 15 minutes. I don't want to box all your time. So you had some other. Go ahead.
I know. I was just going to go there. I wasn't sure before you came on. I wasn't really sure how we were going to bring up the subject of Ocean Gate, because I thought it was kind of a brutal irony of history that you have other things with Gate after them, Watergate and Russia Gate. Now we have Ocean Gate. I'm sure that wasn't, you didn't expect that when you started it, but you seem to be a bit of a target during that period after that unfortunate tragedy that happened.
Well, and let's not forget his friend died. His friend died, right? You personally took a hit on that, right?
Yeah. And honestly, so quick aside though on the name though, when Stockton and I started the company, we had to come up with a name for it, and we were talking about opening up the oceans, right? So for the space crowd that's used to SpaceX, we all know that Elon started this to improve humanity's access to space. So when we started OceanGate, it was the same thing, trying to improve humanity's access to the oceans. And we figured, if we do this right, we can really kind of be like this gateway to the oceans. It can be like an ocean gate. It was like, we looked at each other and go, Ocean Gate. Yeah, that's what it'll be. And I said the same thing you guys did. It's like, wait, we just have Watergate. We had, at the time, there was whatever the scandal was with the Clintons. It was like something gate. And Stockton's like, nah, no one will put the two and two together. It'll be fine. And sure enough, here we are. So the whole OceanGate incident is, 2 years ago it was obviously traumatic. As you mentioned earlier, I did end up just writing a book on it that's coming out in November. It's basically a memoir of my time as co-founder and CEO of OceanGate. I should be clear. I've learned my lesson now. I don't intend to make money off the deaths of 5 people. I'm going to be donating the royalty profits to charities promoting youth exploration programs. But I really, to your point, it was a traumatic experience for me because, my co-founder, my friend, died in the implosion. So writing the book was really part of kind of my grieving process, right?
Yeah,
How I kind of dealt with it. But the decision to publish the book, because I had a lot of friends, because what you just mentioned, a lot of friends that said, don't publish the book, right? You don't need more arrows in the back and all that.
Right.
But the decision to publish the book was really about trying to get people to form their opinions with greater context, right? And with more facts. I'm hoping I may be able to change some people's minds about OceanGate, about the sub, about Stockton. But even if I don't change anybody's mind, I don't mind. It's okay if people have negative opinions about all this, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinions. It just frustrates me when people are forming these opinions without having all the facts or without having proper context.
Right. Exactly. I was going to mention that simply because I thought you were being piled on. I thought by some of these committee hearings and some of the stuff you were going, people were just throwing down at you, and it's like, he wasn't even there when they started building these subs. He was already out of the company. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that actually why I decided to speak up in the media and ultimately write the book is because, a lot of people that were speaking up because they didn't have legal liability or anything like that didn't know what they were talking about because they had no firsthand experience.
Right. They weren't
and the people. But the people that had firsthand experience weren't speaking up because they had legal liability. Right. And all of a sudden I realized, wait, I fall into this perfect gap in between where I have a lot of first and secondhand experience, because even though I left the company, I kept in touch with Stockton and talked with him over the 10 years. But at the same time, I'd been gone for so long, I didn't have any legal liability. So that's what kind of allowed me to do this. And it's one of these things. I wrote a LinkedIn post about this. I kind of had to talk about it anyway, because one way or another, my name was going to be linked to this because of that title that I had, co-founder. Right. That's a title you don't give up. Anyway, it is what it is. Now 2 years on, I think it's time to really, take the lessons learned and have humanity move forward in ocean exploration, ocean innovation, and also the lessons learned that we can take into space. Right.
Well, what would those lessons be? What would your takeaways be that we can apply to both?
And we've had to do this actually with a lot of the human spaceflight stuff, right? Is we have to allow some level of risk taking on the part of private individuals, because it's their money, it's their lives, and if they want to take risks, they should be allowed to take risks. At the same time, we have to weigh that against public safety, right? So we've got to figure out where that line is supposed to be drawn from a regulatory standpoint. And I know for us in the space world, that's a big part of what the Commercial Spaceflight Federation has been doing over the past 10 plus years. A lot of things about, lessons learned about innovation and testing. I think that's probably one of the bigger lessons learned, not just with space, but across the board, right? At the end of the day, OceanGate was a developing innovative new human transportation system. And to the extent that the technology revolution that we're experiencing is starting to hit human transportation systems, whether it's spaceships, stratospheric balloons, suborbital vehicles, autonomous driving cars, supersonic jets, eVTOL, like all that stuff. That's the unique part about those technologies is at some point, by definition, at some point in the technology development cycle, you have to put a human in the loop.
Right. Yeah.
And as soon as you do that, you incur a lot of risk. So that decision can't be taken lightly.
I've been skeptical. Joe's got some comments in here about, this hasn't happened in the new space sector yet. We haven't had a break like that.
Well, actually, I have to. You have to put in the exception. The exception was that Virgin Galactic accident a few
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah,
Someone did die.
But if you had the Katy Perry launch or the William Shatner launch fail, that would be a whole different thing, right? And I have been very publicly skeptical of the tourism market in the space sector for a long time. It was actually just this a couple weeks ago in Orlando where Pascal Lee convinced me that maybe there is an opening for the tourism market in space, because I've been pretty curmudgeonly about that topic. But what if William Shatner had died? What if they made a big deal of the Katy Perry and the other women on that flight? That would have set us back years in the industry.
Well, and I'm a big curmudgeon on space tourism too. For 20 plus years,
Really?
I've had this argument with
I thought
John
you were on the
Spencer.
other side.
No, with John Spencer, I've been telling him I don't like the term space tourism. I think humanity's centuries away from making space safe enough for quote unquote tourism. Now, but like what we were doing with OceanGate, there is a narrow sliver of the tourism industry that is much more risk taking, like people that climb Mount Everest or things like that. If you want to classify that as tourism, the thing is that in the general vernacular, when you're talking to the general public and they hear the word tourism, they think Disneyland.
Yeah, right.
And even going underwater in subs, as safe as they are, I talk about this going to space. It's like going to Disneyland, except that you can die on the way to Disneyland. You can die at Disneyland, and you can die on the way back from Disneyland. If you want to consider that tourism, then great. But I think we're a long ways off from kind of quote unquote mainstream tourism for space. But the 4 crew members in the OceanGate submersible, and I know a lot of the other mission specialists that went on those dives, they did not consider themselves tourists. They thought they were part of the technology development cycle. They understood it was an experimental sub that was still being tested. It's not a comfort for the families, that lost their loved ones. And it does sound like I can see why it sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but if you talk to the mission specialists, that's what they would say, at least most of them.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes. You want to get into the Humans to Venus Foundation a little bit?
Yeah, sure. In 2 minutes or less. So Humans to Venus Foundation is basically a U.S.-based 501c3, more international than anything, that supports Venus science and education programs. Specifically with a long-term vision of setting up a permanent human presence in the Venusian atmosphere. And this is a big, long thing in and of itself, because of how do I summarize all this? It's kind of an extension of my wanting to help make humanity a multiplanetary species. And one of the things that always bothered me about setting up shop on Mars was the 38% gravity, because we're not sure if humans can reproduce in less than 1 G of gravity. We hope we can, but we don't know. So I always thought it'd be interesting if we could actually set up shop somewhere with 1 G of gravity. The closest planet for us that has 1 G of gravity is Venus. We all know we can't land on the surface of Venus because the pressure is too great and the temperature is too high. But it turns out about 50 kilometers off the surface, it's roughly 1 atmosphere pressure and roughly about 25 centigrade. So if we could put up some sort of floating structures in the Venusian atmosphere, it may just actually be some of the most Earth-like conditions on the planet. And NASA's looked at it, and other folks. So that's kind of where I'm trying to spend some of my time and energy now. Now that the OceanGate book is coming out in November, I've started work on my second book, which I hope to be out next year, which I'm tentatively calling Marketing Venus. And it'll be basically putting together all of the stuff that I've learned over the last 5 years from experts around the world about this idea of having humans in the Venusian atmosphere. So stay tuned for that next year.
Okay.
I'm excited about that. I was so skeptical about this idea when I first heard about it, and then over time, I'm actually kind of becoming a convert on this one. So
you guys know Andy Aldrin, right?
Yeah.
He's the biggest cynic in the world, and we've got him convinced.
So. So that's hard to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh God, we ran out. We were supposed to get the 5-year and the 25-year. I don't think we have time for this now, but maybe next time we have you on
soon,
and it will be soon, I hope. And I hope you'll come back.
I'll come on next year, talk about the book, and we can start with the 5-year and 25-year, and then
okay, it's a deal. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Guillermo Söhnlein, a big guy in space history and going on right now to the present day. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's great seeing you guys.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay, our guest Thursday is none other than Shubber Ali, and we're going to be another piece of space history. All this time, we're going to be talking about the space cynics and a lot of the fun we used to have back then. And it's going to be it's going to be a gas. Yes, Guillermo, I hope you'll come to listen. That will be. I think you'll enjoy those conversations. Yeah, we had fun in those days. About the same time you were doing Space Angels Network. So, anyway. On that note, from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance for Michael Lane and Sean Key, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.